Hey everybody, Ryan from Barn 3 here, and in today's video, I'm just going to be doing a quick crash course on the basics of aux switching. Ever since we launched our new AUX pedals, we've been having lots of correspondence with folks that have been asking us questions about aux switching. Everybody from your first-time guitar player that's building their first pedal board to veteran players that have just never used aux switches, and even some of our longtime customers that have been using our legacy products like the AUX and AUX 9. Now that the AUX works with a wider variety of pedals on the market and different pedal brands, you've been having questions about compatibility. So in today's video, I'm just going to address 5 simple questions, starting with, what is an aux switch? Number 2, what can aux switches do? Number 3, what makes the AUX unique? Number 4, how do I know if the pedal I have can accept an aux switch? And number 5, how do I program an aux switch? So let's get into it. Now, right up front, I just want to define terms here because I may use words interchangeably. You'll hear me say aux switch, aux pedal, auxiliary switch, auxiliary pedal, and here at Barn 3, we've sort of done a play on words by calling ours the AUX switch, but they all mean the same thing. And basically, an aux switch is just an external foot switch that you can plug into a main effects pedal to sort of extend some of those deeper functions out to external foot switches. Now, they can come in many different shapes and sizes. You can have single button foot switches like our Tesla Tap, or dual button foot switches like our AUX Mini and Standard, and then even 3-button foot switches like our AUX 3. Now, some other terms that you might hear in regards to aux pedals are latching or momentary, and this refers to the type of foot switch used in the pedal. And this is important to understand because if your effects pedal is calling for a latching foot switch, a momentary foot switch will not necessarily work with that pedal, and vice versa. So, what do these terms mean? Let's start with latching. I have a latching foot switch here, and these are pretty easy to identify because they make an audible and physical click when you press them, unlike a momentary foot switch, which is pretty quiet. So what's going on in here? We can imagine that this foot switch is in its off state right now, and when we press and release it, it now latches or stays in its on position. And that won't change until we press and release again, and now it's latched into its off state again. A momentary foot switch, on the other hand, only momentarily changes states as we're pressing the foot switch. And when we release it, it goes back to its normal state. And this is where we get the terms normally open or normally closed. A normally open momentary foot switch means that in its normal state, the signal cannot flow through because the contacts inside are not touching. Once we press the foot switch down, those contacts close momentarily, allowing the signal to flow through, and then when we release the foot switch, it goes back to its normal state of open. This is the type of foot switch that is used in most momentary aux switches out there. On the other hand, a normally closed momentary foot switch means that those contacts inside are closed in the normal state until we press the foot switch, they open, breaking the signal, and then when we release it, they go back to their closed position. And this is the type of foot switch that is used in most momentary aux switches made for Boss pedals. Now, what an aux switch can do is going to vary depending on what specific effects pedal you're connecting it to. So on some pedals, when you connect an aux switch, it's just going to work because the manufacturer has predetermined what functionality they want assigned to the aux switch. On other pedals, you'll have a whole list of things that you can choose from to assign to that aux switch. Some of the more common ones that we usually see are things like banking up and down, or preset scrolling up and down, or you could assign a tap tempo to an aux switch, or one function that goes by different names. Sometimes it's called flux, sometimes it's called flex, but you can imagine it like a built-in expression pedal where you're ramping between 2 values of a given effect, like a whammy effect or a big reverb swell. And then on pedals like the Eventide H90 or the Line 6 HX Stomp, those pedals have different modes that they can operate in, and you could actually assign an aux switch to toggle between those modes more quickly. Now, every manufacturer is going to have different options of what you can choose to assign to your aux switch, so your best bet to get a full list is going to be to consult the user manual for your specific pedal. What makes the AUX unique? The first thing is our form factor. We offer 3 different pedals in the AUX-U line, starting with our AUX-U Mini, which is great for those smaller effects pedals that accept aux switching. Next, we have our AUX-U Standard, which is the slimmest design we have, saves a ton of space on your board and works great with those bigger digital effects from your favorite manufacturers. Now, both the AUX-U Mini and the AUX-U Standard have 2 foot switches on them, but you can actually add a 3rd foot switch by plugging in our Tesla tap to the right side of the pedal. This can be helpful in cases like maybe you have a delay pedal that lives on the top left corner of your pedal board and you're using the AUX-U pedals to scroll up and down in presets. You could assign a Tesla tap to your tap tempo and move that to the front of your board where it's more easily accessible. And finally, we have our AUX-U 3, which has a great ergonomic design but has all 3 foot switches built in. The next thing that differentiates us is our input jack. Most manufacturers put theirs on the back side of the pedal. We put ours on the side, and we did this so that you could mount your AUX-U flush to the front of your effects pedal. This saves space on your pedal board and also creates a more cohesive setup between the 2 pedals. The next thing is our optional AUX-U mounting plate, and this is helpful for 2 main reasons. Number 1, once the pedals are mounted to the plate, they become one cohesive unit. So maybe you're the type of person that doesn't use a pedal board and you're just carrying a few loose pedals around to your shows. Now, rather than having an effects pedal and a separate aux switch that you have to set up every time, it's already set up, it's all together in one place. And then also, when you step on your aux switch, you don't run the risk of it sliding away from the pedal it's controlling. The other way that it's helpful is by essentially creating free real estate on your pedal board. So once the 2 pedals are mounted to the plate, the AUX-U can live in the negative spaces where no other pedal could live, such as hanging out over the front edge of an incredibly packed pedal board, or hanging over the gaps in a pedal board that has slats. And finally, the most important thing that sets the AUX-U apart is our patent-pending universal switching circuit. Every single AUX-U comes with the 4 most popular momentary aux circuits, starting with our N or normal setting, which will work with 99% of pedals that accept aux switches. Pedals from companies like Eventide, Line 6, Digitech, Source Audio, Kemper, Fractal, Morningstar, and many others. The other 3 sections of the AUX-U are proprietary, so our S or Strymon setting will work with your Big Sky, Timeline, and Mobius. The M or Maris setting will work with pedals like the Mercury 7, Enzo, or Polymoon. And finally, our B or Boss setting will work with countless Boss pedals. So the benefit of the AUX-U is that as you evolve as a player and buy, sell, and trade new pedals, the AUX-U can come with you. You no longer have to buy proprietary aux switches as you change pedal brands. How do I know if the pedal I have can accept an aux switch? The first thing you're going to do is simply look at your pedal. You should see some sort of a 1/4 inch input that you're not using, so it's not your in or your out for your signal chain, and it will have a label on it. Usually it'll be labeled either AUX or aux switch. Sometimes you'll see EXP for expression. Boss Pedals usually labels theirs CTL for control, and then other companies will label theirs FS for foot switch. So if you see something like that, you have a pretty good idea that your pedal can accept either an aux switch and or an expression pedal. And then to confirm, you're going to need to consult your user manual and search for a section that talks about either expression pedal, aux switching, external control, or foot switch control. And in there, you're going to be looking for the section about aux switching. And the most important part is whether or not they need to see a momentary switch or a latching foot switch. Most pedals out there, you're going to see the word momentary somewhere, and you'll know that the AUX-U will work with it. How do I program an aux switch? Now, unfortunately, this is not a one-size-fits-all answer because every single pedal is programmed differently. But here at Barn 3, we've put a lot of effort into creating a bunch of different tutorial videos that will go over the programming for some specific pedals. So I would recommend that you start by looking through our YouTube channel to see if you can find your pedal there. If not, we're going to need to consult our user manual. So I'm going to show you a few examples of what you need to look for in your manual. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a few examples here. This is by no means a comprehensive list, but it'll just give you a couple examples of what you might expect to see in your user manual. So here we have the user manual for the Morningstar MC6 Mark II, and they've got this great table of contents over here, which has got lots of things we can look at. And right away, I see EXP 1 and 2, and as we discussed earlier, EXP is one of the words that we're sort of looking for to tell us that we might be able to use an aux switch. So we'll click on that. And right here, we can see different options that we can use the Omni ports for. We can do TRS MIDI output, we can do TRS expression pedal, or TRS aux switch input. And it says up to 3 switches per port, which means that for this particular pedal, we could actually connect 2 separate AUX-U3s and get 6 extra foot switches. But what it doesn't tell us in here is how to program it. So we'll go back to our navigation bar over here, and right down here, I see external aux switches. So we'll click on that, and here it tells us how we get into the global configuration of this to program our aux switch to do what we want it to do. And then on this particular pedal, we sort of have 2 different choices of how the aux switches will function. So we've got this fixed switch, which means the aux switches are going to act as bank up, bank down, and toggle page. Or we could set it up for what they're calling just the aux switch. And it says your aux switches will function as fully programmable switches, just like the built-in switches, sans the LCD display. So that means if you set it up to do this, you could program the aux-U just like you would all the other switches on the MC6. Another quick thing I just want to show you in this manual is if we scroll down, it tells us that the foot switches need to be momentary and normally open. And we know that the aux-U is a momentary, normally open foot switch, so we are good to go. Okay, let's check out another manual. Here I've got the manual for the Boss DD500. And on this one, right in our table of contents here, I see assigning function to an external pedal. So that's great. We'll click on that. And right off the bat, right here, it shows us how we get into the programming menu. And then right below it, we've got all the different things that we can choose from to assign to our aux switches. We got tap tempo, hold, warp, twist. We got bank up and down or loop on and off. So this is a great example of a manual where you sort of have everything you need to program your aux switches right in front of you. But I do want to show you one other example of how you might have to be a little bit of a sleuth to get to the information you need in a user manual. So here we have the Line 6 DL4 Mark II manual, and this manual is laid out fantastic. They've got this great table of contents over here that is right here. I can see setting up an expression pedal and foot switches, but I've seen other manuals out there that are not so obvious, and sometimes it's hard to find the section on aux switching. So I just wanted to use this manual to show you something else you can look for if you can't immediately find the section on aux switching. So what we want to do is we're going to go right here where it says rear panel. This is a fantastic place to start because it shows us all of our ins and outs on the back of the pedal. And right here we see expression pedal and foot switch 5 and 6. And it's marked number 1. And if we go down to the explanation here, it says expression pedal and foot switch 5 and 6. And it says you can connect an expression pedal plus a foot switch, or you can connect 2 foot switches. And it even says right here, when purchasing external foot switches, you want to get the momentary unlatched type. And we know that that's what the aux-U is, so it will definitely work with this. And the reason this is great is because we know that this is talking about aux switching, and it gives us a hyperlink right to the section that we want to go to. So it says setting up an expression pedal and foot switches on page 14. So we'll click on that. And up top, we got expression pedal stuff. We got single foot switch stuff. We'll scroll down. Here we see a 2-button foot switch similar to the aux-U. And if we dig a little bit in here, we can see for either of these foot switch connections, you'll need to configure global settings, pedal jack functionality to the 2 foot switches option. So that's just saying we need to set it up to recognize an aux switch. So let's click on that. And here we see pedal jack functionality, which in our case, we'd have to change this from expression pedal to 2 foot switches. But what it doesn't show us right here is how to get into the global settings. So in general, just scroll up to the top of the section that you're in, and you should find right here how to access the global settings. And then once we get into the global settings, we can use these charts, which are all color-coded, and we can change the functionality of our aux switch and even the foot switches on the DL4 itself. Now, again, this manual is laid out perfectly fine. Just wanted to show you how, if you can't find what you're looking for, check out that rear panel index that most manuals have, and that should sort of guide you to the section of the manual that you need to be in. Now, just a reminder, we do have a bunch of videos on our YouTube channel with tutorials on programming, and in fact, we do have one for the DL4. Thanks so much for watching this video. We really hope that you learned something new today, and we're so excited to see all the interesting ways you expand your pedals with Barn 3. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, or for more information, head over to barn3.com.